I assume if they had said she has worked closely with Bryan Kohberger, they would note it in this article. So let's talk about this op-ed that was published by the Idaho Statesman in response to this media call. Of course, everyone's had a ton of questions about what the fate of the media is going to be in terms of this case, because there has been a non-dissemination order, colloquially known as a gag order, in place. Obviously, of late, there's evidence that this has been violated. I'm going to point you directly to the NBC Dateline where they say, we're going to show you never before reported evidence. And everyone looked at each other and said, yes, we know we don't know about his search history or the car because there is a gag order. I applaud the judge for encouraging the defense to push for a special investigation into this, because it definitely seems like it's jeopardizing the case. But in light of this call, the Idaho Statesman is co-signing a letter asking for the judge to consider certain special accommodations for the media. So Ada County has said they're going to live stream the trial. And live stream the trial allows a lot of people, both mainstream corporate reporters, but also true crime podcasts, YouTubers, things like that, to access the trial simultaneously. The mainstream or more corporate established media seems to have objections to this. And some of them are legitimate and some of them are a little bit, I don't want to say self-serving, but they seem to prioritize their authority here. So I want to go through them, because if there are no cameras, like TV cameras allowed in the courtroom, there is a restriction on what information you'll get. And I think this op-ed does a good job of pointing out what is necessary when it comes to reporting, or what some of the advantages to having in-courtroom reporters are. But I also don't know that their solution is totally in line with sort of the modern way crime information is disseminated. So let's get into it. So the Idaho Statesman writes, we have serious concerns regarding media access, a concern that doesn't seem to be getting enough attention from the courts. The Idaho Statesman has signed on to a letter to the courts from several media outlets requesting that the court allow a pool still photographer in the courtroom, that the court reserve at least one seat for a pool text journalist, that the court make individual camera feeds available from the live stream that's being provided by the court, and that the court consider lifting the non-dissemination or gag order during the trial. We support all of these requests, but in particular, we see a serious flaw with how the court has proposed handling seating. So the court has said that there's going to be a lottery system, and that during every day at noon, anyone who wants to attend the trial has to go on. They have to have a valid form of ID, and it's basically first come, first serve. It's not guaranteeing anyone seats. And there are some challenges for this. I mean, obviously, if you're an individually funded, podcast, or if you're from AP News, if you're going to invest the money to go there, you definitely want to be able to have access every single day. And especially if you're going to continuously report on the story, if you got a seat one day and didn't get another, it would be challenging to continue. So the Idaho Statesman continues, legitimate reporters will be subject to the same first come, first served system as the general public. That's no way to ensure that journalists have a seat in such an important trial. In fact, it's entirely possible that the system results in no actual reporters in the courtroom at all. Even worse, the system actually hamstrings reporters who might be in the courtroom working at noon, at the courthouse filing stories, going live with a report, filing out of the courtroom at the time that the system goes live, or simply working on another story at that moment. The reservation system favors, as the media's letter to the court points out, those with free time on their hands and the fastest internet connection at the moment. I find this kind of interesting because, yes, that is a challenge for anybody, but also if you were a reporter, I mean, I guess they're saying that the reservation system is going to work where if I wanted to be in the courtroom and I was there one day, I couldn't have, someone I work with reserving me a seat the next day. In some ways, again, if you're a major media outlet, it seems like this is the kind of task you would assign a summer or fall intern to. Every day at noon, they have to make sure this reporter gets into the lottery system. I assume that they don't mean to sound arrogant when they say journalists would be treated the same way as the public. And I think journalists and news reporters can do an important job when it comes to courtroom reporting, especially because not everyone has all the time in the world to listen to hours and hours of live stream. It for me, because I have always worked more in independent media, it's interesting because the general public could be reporting on this, right? We have access to things like X. We have live streams. You could be walking out into the steps every day and going live on Twitch to talk about what's going on in the trial. So this idea that like we can't be a part of the public is a little bit funny, because I think when you're independent, you get used to having to kind of be scrappy and make it work. On the other hand, you know, if you're trying to have as many people as possible know about this story, having an outlet like the Statesman, which is the local newspaper, or a national outlet in the courtroom every day, would ensure that more people get more information, which is transparent. You know, there's some legitimacy to it. So this is the solution the Statesman suggests. The best solution at minimum is to allow at least one pool reporter who is one trained journalist from a legitimate, reputable news outlet who will report from the courtroom with a guaranteed seat each day to provide a written account that is shared with every news outlet. Even better would be a pool reporter along with 3 or 4 guaranteed seats for journalists that could be determined by a random lottery system. Whatever system is chosen, the bottom line is that for such an important trial as this, it is vital that the media have a presence in the courtroom each day to relay the events to the public. And the current system doesn't guarantee that. So it is interesting to see this local regional newspaper team up with national news outlets to say, hey, we think that we are not going to be able to serve the public in our role as people who give information about the trial if we aren't guaranteed a seat. It's kind of interesting. Again, there's a little bit of me that is like, but do you deserve a seat more than the average person? I don't know. Maybe. But again, in light of the recent leaks, it is sort of interesting to think, but which one of you are reputable reporters and which one of you are claiming the rights to be considered legitimate journalists? If you have NBC, journalists going in, but NBC Dateline is part of the leak problem, or at least disseminated information that could potentially make the trial bias or give Kohberger a chance to say, hey, everything was poisoned against me. I deserve a retrial. I deserve to be acquitted. Would you, if you're the Idaho Statesman, would you be like, no, NBC, you have to sit this one out? There's also a challenge because a lot of major outlets seem pretty convinced of Kohberger's guilt, and I know a lot of people are, and there are reasons for that, some that are totally legitimate. But he hasn't been convicted, and I don't think the media has held itself accountable to keeping at least a little bit of the window open, right? It is a tragic thing that happened to Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie, but it's not over. I mean, this trial hasn't had a verdict. And so I think the media has failed in its obligation to sort of represent the presumption of innocence. And I'm going to give you an example. So this is an article from The Guardian. It came out on May 31st. Its title is Idaho Murder Case Runs into Problems but Suspect Set for August Trial. Again, because his defense team had been requesting that the trial be delayed in light of the media leak. I want to draw your attention to a section of this article, and it goes through kind of the background, some of the history, and what he's accused of. But I want to point out where they are quoting America's psychiatrist. So this article quotes forensic psychiatrist Carol Lieberman. On Twitter, she refers to herself as America's psychiatrist. That's where I'm getting that from. She is an expert witness, or she's not testifying as far as I know, but she has an expert background in this. But nowhere in this report, nor the report that this hyperlinks to, does it indicate that she has ever personally spoken to Kohberger. So this is what they include. Forensic psychiatrist Carol Lieberman has said she believes Kohberger's decision to study psychology, then criminology, was because he was, quote, trying to calm the demons inside of him, end quote, and simultaneously, quote, trying to learn how to commit the perfect crime, end quote. This is something it seems like the defense is teeing up to present because they haven't been able to successfully connect Kohberger to this group of friends, nor have they been able to totally give you a motive. So they're starting to set up like there's just something wrong with him. He's an evil person. To The Guardian, last week she went even further, arguing that the bloody crime scene and the use of a knife was evidence that Kohberger harbored rage against young women. Kohberger, she claimed, had held this rage since at least middle school when he had a crush on a cheerleader said to have looked like Kaylee Gonzalez. Oh my gosh, I always say her name wrong. Only for her to reject him. quote, "I think that's why he stalked and killed them," she said. This person, as far as we can tell, has not interviewed him. Lieberman is basing her expert quote to this national publication on what? And there's no shade to her. Like, I believe she is a forensic psychiatrist. I believe she has a background. I assume if they had said she has worked closely with Bryan Kohberger, they would note it in this article. So what she's basing this theory of like a frustrated semi-incel attack on is media reporting. But the media is leaking information. It doesn't seem that credible to me. And again, this idea that she says that's why he stalked and killed them. Like, yes, they died. That's tragic. But no one has successfully proven that he has stalked them. That's why we're going to have this trial. So if you're the public and you're depending on the media for information and they're going to get reserved seats, is the Guardian who you want in there? Because they're just picking the most sensational person. Like, whoever will give them the spiciest quote, they're putting in, it seems like. I mean, the article is really detailed. It sums up a lot of information. It's helpful to read, but is this what we want? I don't think so. And I know people are critical of like independent podcasts or true crime YouTubers and things like that, but you know, a lot of them spend hours and hours and hours digging through stuff. It doesn't seem like they are bound by the same, you know, guidelines that this corporate press is, and maybe that's a good thing. I think this case needs cameras in some sense. One of the things I didn't quote, but the Idaho Statesman talks about, is when you're in the courtroom reporting, you can see sort of the reaction from the family members. You can see kind of how the jury is acting, if they're shifting their seats, if anyone's staring dead ahead. Because of the way the live stream is set up, we'll only see the judge and the defense and prosecution and the witness stands, except for when the surviving roommates are testifying, unless they're okay with their faces being shown. So it's more restricted, and you don't get a sense of what the energy there is like. I mean, I know from some of the reporting I've done in the past, being able to listen to opening statements and then walk out into the hallway and see how families and loved ones are reacting, it does make a difference. It helps you understand what's going on. But I guess the live stream is better than nothing. And in fact, some ways I think the live stream, which at least lets you independently be able to hear testimony, kind of the way the jury is maybe better than having a reserved set of seats where only, you know, kind of pay to play big organizations can get those seats out of this lottery that's been suggested. Maybe I'm being too untrusting, but having assigned seats or a specific section of seats reserved for certain people who the court or the media get to decide are journalists seems like it might not be in the best interest of the public either. That's all I have for today. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know what kind of media presence you would like to see at this trial. I'll be back a little bit later with a different news-related video, and then again next week, hopefully with another Idaho 4 update. Thank you all who have subscribed. If you made it this far, maybe you can subscribe too, and leave me a comment. I love keeping up with your discourse below. It's always great to hear what you guys are thinking. Have a great day.